Okay. So today we need to continue working on the structure of an argumentative essay, and we need to finish off with the body and the conclusion. Let's get this started. Okay. Okay, so yesterday we were looking at the introduction. We said that in the intro, you should have, the main thing is just your position. But you can also have some other things, like you can try to capture the reader's interest by writing an interesting sentence, maybe a question. You can try to provide background by defining what the topic is about, maybe explaining why it's important to write an essay or why it's important to debate that certain topic. You can raise a question, so you can acknowledge that there's an issue regarding the topic. And if you want, you can summarize the structure of your body or have a transitional phrase, something that tells the reader that what you will be doing during the essay. So those were the elements that you could have in an intro. Now, as for the body goes, the body's main purpose is to provide evidence supporting your claim. So your claim is your position, your opinion on the matter. And the body is going to try and justify that position. So what the body's going to do is provide evidence supporting that. So you can maybe use some sources to cite or
It cut off.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I was saying in the body, you need to provide evidence supporting your claim, which is your position or your opinion. So you can, I don't know, look for sources to help you out. That's why before writing the essay, you also need to outline the essay. You need to look for ideas to use. You need to maybe do some research on what information you're going to provide. So all that information, those examples that you want, they need to be in the body so that you can justify what you're saying. So this is what you need to have, or what you could have. So first, you're usually going to have this topic sentence. So the topic sentence is going to be like a short introduction to the body. So the body has, a body paragraph has its own sort of intro and his own little conclusion. So in the first sentence, you always need to introduce the topic. You need to introduce what the idea of the paragraph will be. So for example, here, the author is going to talk about the use of Wikipedia as a source of writing. That's the topic. So you need to introduce the reader to the paragraph by telling them what the topic of the paragraph is. So you can start by just mentioning what the topic is, like the author is doing here, like a common frustration for teacher is a student's use of Wikipedia as a source in their writing. So in this case, the author is just mentioning what the topic is. Sometimes you can start right off with your argument, which is your reason. So you can start right off by saying, I don't know, Wikipedia is being proven to be a valid source of writing. And then you can provide evidence to support that. So you can either introduce the topic by saying something about what it is, or you can start right off and give your argument. So what you're going to be proving in the paragraph. So you can say, if you think that Wikipedia is a valid source of writing, then you can start by saying that. So you could say Wikipedia has been demonstrated to be one of the most reliable sources of writing. And then you need to prove that. So that's usually going to be the first sentence. Okay? Is this okay? The first sentence?
Yes.
Okay, it can be more than a sentence, but it needs to be the first part of your body part. Then, since you have said something, here you need to provide evidence. Like, I mean, in general, in the body paragraphs, you should provide evidence. Now, the evidence could be, let's erase this. So the evidence could be a research, maybe that you have found. So something from another author that you're using, that you're quoting, that you're citing. It could be an experiment. It could be an example too, a case study. So an example basically is, it could be a personal example too. So you can tell a story from your own experience as an example. So if you're saying Wikipedia is a reliable source of writing, you can tell me a story about how, I don't know, once you were doing this research for your final project, and I don't know, you found something on Wikipedia that was valid. So you can tell a personal story as an example. You can use maybe a more known case study, so you can talk about, I don't know, some very famous problem that a student had for using Wikipedia as a source. Or maybe you can turn to history and see if there's an experience like that. So what else could you use? Yeah, basically it could be some kind of research, experiment, something, or maybe an article, an author, anything that proves what you're saying. So here the author is saying that a common frustration for teachers is the students' use of Wikipedia. And then he's providing evidence on what he's saying. He's saying its prevalence among students is not exaggerated. Here it is. A survey found that the vast majority of the students surveyed used Wikipedia. An article in The Guardian stresses a common objection to its use. A reliance on Wikipedia can discourage students from engaging with genuine academic writing. So here he's proving everything he said. First thing he said, students use Wikipedia. So he's proving that with this. The vast majority of students use Wikipedia. So it's a survey that he cited. It's a research that has been conducted. And he's obviously using in-text citations. So this is MLA format. And then he's providing evidence on what he's saying here, that that's a frustration for teachers, right? So he's saying an article in The Guardian stresses a common objection to its use, and he's citing a reliance on Wikipedia can discourage students from engaging with genuine academic writing. And again, he's citing. So he's proving everything he said before, right? He's providing evidence with the help of other authors, of other researchers, of anything like that. It's okay so far? The evidence part?
Yes.
So usually to find that evidence, you just need to look this online or maybe in books or something. And you're gonna find a lot of this different research. You need to try to find something that's reliable. So probably not Wikipedia, speaking of which, maybe you can go to the sources at the end of Wikipedia, but reliable source. Then you cannot just provide this evidence without saying anything about it. So you need to reflect on the evidence that you have provided. So you need to kind of analyze or reflect on the evidence that you have provided. So here, or make a comment, you know. So here, the author is making a comment on that research and on that survey and on that article. So the author says, teachers are clearly not mistaken in viewing Wikipedia usage as obvious among their students. But the claim that it discourages engagement with academic sources requires further investigation. So he's saying what teachers say is wrong, or well, not wrong, but it requires further investigation. So we still need to see whether that's true or not. In this case, the author disagrees with that. I'm gonna maybe, okay, so this was the topic sentence, right? Maybe we can write it. That was the topic sentence. It's like the intro to the paragraph. This here was the evidence. Okay, and then he's making a comment on the evidence, right? So this is the okay. So in this case, you don't necessarily have to agree with what you have found. So for example, here, the author disagrees with this
Yes.
author, with this other author. So you cannot, I mean, you don't have to agree with the evidence you're providing. Sometimes it could be evidence that you're gonna counterclaim, that you're gonna object with other evidence. So you can sometimes use two sources and contrast them. So say, okay, this author says this, but I support this other author that says the opposite. So you can use two pieces of evidence to prove a point. So he's analyzing that. So he's saying teachers are clearly not mistaken, but the claim that it discourages engagement requires further investigation. So is that okay so far, the analysis?
Can you explain me one more time because it is against about the evidence.
Okay, sure. So what he's doing here in this paragraph, the way that he's presenting his claim or his reasoning is by refuting an argument all again. So I think that's the style of this author. So he introduces something and then he refutes. So he says, okay, so teachers don't want students to use Wikipedia because they think that it's unreliable, maybe. And he's proving that it's unreliable. So he says, a study conducted by this author has shown that yes, sometimes Wikipedia can be unreliable. And then he's making a comment on that study. So he's saying, it's true that it can be unreliable sometimes. However, I think that it encourages students to use different sources, you know? So he has, the topic sentence is the counterclaim. In this case, not in any case. So you can write your own claim in the topic sentence. Let's write this down with blue. So for this author, his topic sentence, his intro is the counterclaim. So what teachers believe versus what he believes, right? That's a different story. Then the evidence is proving his counterclaim. And then he's making a comment on the evidence saying, so you see how it works? So he presents a counterclaim, he proves his counterclaim, then he objects the evidence that he has presented so that then he can object the counterclaim, right? So it's like it's like cause and effect, right? If the evidence for the counterclaim is wrong, then the counterclaim is wrong, you know? So what he wants to do here in this paragraph is prove that this is wrong. So in order to do that, he first needs to kind of support this. So say, okay, yes, teachers are right in this and this and that. So he's providing evidence, but then he's gonna refute that evidence and therefore refute the claim. So he's gonna say they shouldn't be frustrated, you know? Is it okay what he's doing?
Yes.
Okay. So you can do that. You don't necessarily have to do that, do it that way. So you can, in your topic sentence, instead of your counterclaim, you can just have your claim. You can just say, I don't know, I believe, but instead of I believe, you can just say, Wikipedia is a valid source of writing and it encourages students to I don't know, to be more academic. So you start with your claim. Then you can provide evidence illustrating your claim. So you could say, a study has shown that the students who use Wikipedia tend to be more engaged or, I don't know, with academic life. So you can prove it. And then you can make a comment and say, that's why I believe that Wikipedia is a good source. So you can do it that way. And then at the end of the two body paragraphs, you can add some counterclaims. So there are different ways to do it.
Okay.
So this here, by the way, that's in blue, is just, I mean, what this author is doing, not what any other author does. So, okay. So then you need to have a conclusion or reasoning. So you need to, here, if you haven't stated your argument yet, you can state it. But if you have stated your argument, you can just conclude on all that. So you can say, okay, because of what we've seen, Wikipedia is a good source of writing. So let's say what this author says. This author says, this point is treated as self-evident by many teachers, but Wikipedia itself explicitly encourages students to look into other sources. So that's one of his opinion, right? His claim. So Wikipedia encourages students to look into other sources. Its articles often provide references to academic publications and include warning notes where citations are missing. The site's own guidelines for research make clear that it should be used as a starting point, emphasizing that users should always read the references and check whether they really do support what the article says. And then he's citing. So as you can see here, what he's doing, what this author is doing, is objecting this evidence. So this evidence says that Wikipedia makes students don't want to look into other sources. But then he's saying the opposite. He's saying, actually, you're wrong. Wikipedia does encourage students to look other sources. You know, so he's objecting the evidence. I don't know. Okay. And then I think that's too much. And then he has more. So he says, indeed, for many students, Wikipedia is their first encounter with the concepts of citation and reference. The use of Wikipedia, therefore, has a positive side that merits deeper consideration than it often receives. So that's the conclusion. Okay, so as you can see, I'm gonna erase the other parts. Okay, the last two elements that this author has. First thing, he's objecting the evidence that he's presented. So this counts as more evidence.
Objecting.
For you, or for in general terms, it would just be more evidence. But in the case of this author, if we want to analyze what he's doing, he's objecting previous evidence. Or the counter evidence. Right? And then he is concluding. So he's saying, okay, so given that we've seen this evidence, then we can say that, and this is the conclusion. And so yes. So now that he has presented evidence, kind of proving that Wikipedia does encourage students to use other sources, to know about citation and referencing, he says, the use of Wikipedia, therefore, so see how he's using this transition here? So as a result of all this, the use of Wikipedia has a positive side that merits deeper consideration than it often receives. So he's, in other words, saying the use of Wikipedia has a positive side that teachers don't see. You know, so teachers may be wrong about what they think about Wikipedia. Okay. So can you see how this conclusion is the exact opposite of what the topic sentence is?
Yes.
Yes, right. But that's because of the writer's style. Now, in your essay, it could be the same. So if you're saying, if you're starting right off, so let's change this. Let's write another. So here maybe. If in your first sentence you say, Wikipedia encourages students to use other sources inside. So if that's your claim, because that's the author's claim right now, you can use it at the beginning in the first sentence. In the second part, you can provide evidence. So you can say, Wikipedia, I don't know, says, and all of what he said here, right? So read the references. You're providing evidence. And then you can reflect on the evidence and you can say, as we can see here, Wikipedia does this and this and that in order to, I don't know, make students do this and that. So you're reflecting on the evidence. And then the conclusion is going to be the exact same thing that you said in the intro. So you're going to say, so therefore, Wikipedia is a good source. Okay, so that's another way. So in this case, this author is trying to refute what teachers say, but you can, if you want, forget about teachers and just write your own thing. So two ways. Okay.
Yes. And you reflect what will be the correct sentence. And reflect.
I mean, it depends. So you can say, if you're talking about what Wikipedia says, maybe here you can talk about how students react to that. So you could say, when students see this, they know that they need to look for other sources, that they need to refer to other articles, or sometimes they click on the works cited page of Wikipedia and then do this. So you're showing basically the importance or the relevance or the effect of the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can also reflect on what you think about the evidence. But basically, you need to talk about that. You cannot just introduce evidence without saying anything about it. No?
Mm-hmm.
So here, for example, he's reflecting too. He's saying, indeed, for many students, Wikipedia is their first encounter with the concepts of citation and reference. Here he's reflecting as well. You know, teachers are mistaken with this. So is it okay so far?
Yes.
Okay, and that's a body paragraph.
So this paragraph is only for one evidence.
Yes, for one argument.
One argument, yes. So normally it's
Normally 3 body paragraphs.
3 paragraphs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually, I mean, there are different approaches. So if you're doing this one here, and you have those 4 elements, so your claim, not anybody else's claim. So your claim, your evidence, your reflection, and your conclusion, the second body paragraph should be exactly the same. Maybe you can change the order. Maybe you can start with the evidence and then say, so therefore, and then you go with your claim. So you can change the order, but it should include the same thing. So your second body paragraph with a different argument. So if you your second one, you're saying, I don't know, maybe you're saying, not about Wikipedia, but something else. Maybe, I don't know, you're saying the internet allows the students to connect with other students when they're completing assignments. So that's going to be your claim. Then you're going to provide evidence. You're going to say, so according to this research, students, ever since the internet has been used in schools, students tend to have better grades. Then you're going to reflect. So you're going to say, this has caused parents to feel this way. And some teachers say that it's because they are doing this. And then you're going to conclude. And then you're going to say, so however or therefore, I believe that the internet has good effects on students' lives. So you're going to do the exact same thing. And in the third body paragraph, you can introduce the counterclaims. So in the third body paragraph, you can say the opposite. So here you're going to say this. So you're going to introduce something that says, nevertheless, it's important to see the other side. So it's important to see what teachers think of the use of the internet. So what you're going to say, the first complaint that they have is that Wikipedia, and you're going to go back here, that Wikipedia, I don't know, does this to students, this negative thing, right? And you're going to refute it. So counterclaim. And refute it. Or okay.
But the last class you said normally is 2 positive arguments and 1 negative.
I mean, not 2 positive arguments and 1 negative, but 2 positive paragraphs, and the other paragraph would be the counterclaim, right? So that's one approach. That's the usual one. Now you can do what this author did. So this author here is not going to have that body paragraph where he has the counterclaims because he's already saying them here, you know? So he doesn't need that anymore. Now, if you are not doing this, if you're doing this, so you're not mentioning the counterclaims, you're just proving your ideas, then you do need a counterclaim. So in your third paragraph, you're going to introduce that. You're going to prove it, and then you're going to refute it. So you're going to say, you know, even though some teachers may be afraid or maybe, I don't know, frustrated for these reasons, this is not relevant, or this is not accurate, or maybe this is true, but the benefits are more. So this is outweighed by the others. Okay, so it depends. If you're doing this, refuting arguments in each paragraph, then you don't need the third paragraph. You just need another one like this. Or you can combine them too. In one of them, you can have this. So counterclaim, evidence, more evidence, and claim, and then conclusion. Or in the second one, you just have this structure. And then in the third one, you introduce another counterclaim and then your claim. You can combine those. There are many ones.
Okay.
So yeah. They even have names, I think. Okay, let me see if they have. Okay, so look at this. So there are different approaches. These are the Tolman arguments. So in this case, you make a claim, you provide evidence. Now you explain how the ground support the claim, so you're reflecting. And then you can introduce possible counterclaims. So that's another way. You can say, however, even though we have seen this, there is still the possibility of, you kind of limit your idea. That's another way. Then you have the Rogerian argument, which is the one that we saw. So you introduce your argument, you highlight, okay, no, this is what the author did, right? So you have an opposing idea, so the opposing position, then the problems with this position, so you refute the evidence, then you propose your own position, and then you kind of conclude, or you maybe can have a middle ground if you agree with both. So there are different approaches, but these are the most common ones. So you either refute something or you prove what you're saying. Okay. Any questions about the body paragraphs?
No.
Now, finally, the conclusion. Here, it's important to say that in the conclusion, you're not supposed to write anything new. So you cannot really write a new idea, a new argument, nothing that you haven't mentioned before.
Yeah.
So it's just like a summary of your whole essay. So the elements, obviously, you need to have a summary or a reflection on the arguments that you have provided. So here you need to talk about Wikipedia, the internet, or whatever you have said in the body paragraphs. And then you need to restate your position. So you need to kind of say, so that's why I think that teachers are wrong and the internet has a good use in education. So those are the two main things. Now, sometimes you can also do this and you can say, even though in this essay we have seen that the internet has good uses, this topic can be farther, farther looked into, and we still need to, you can kind of reflect that you have seen something and you are proving something, but that has certain limitations. So these are the limitations of your essay. So you cannot know everything, so there must be more things that you need to consider. You can even mention what those are. You could say, however, other important factors should also be considered. And then you can say, such as the mental effects of the internet in students and how that affects their academic performance, and this and this and that. So you can suggest something that you haven't seen in your essay for other people to research on.
How can I say, si bien
Even if or even though.
Even, oh, okay. Even though, could be even though Wikipedia provide you, what did it provide you? Sites and what
So,
was? O sea,
uh,
que Wikipedia te provee todo, la posibilidad de que busques, pero nosotros no lo hacemos, por eso
oh,
los
okay.
profesores no te
So
dejan
yeah,
hacer fuente.
yeah, that's right. So you could say, even though Wikipedia provides you with the tools to, I don't know, to go to other sites and look for other sources, people or students usually don't do it. So that's why there's a problem, right? But in the conclusion, you don't have to focus on just one argument because Wikipedia was just one argument, right? One of them.
Body part.
Yes, that you can say here. If you want to propose something for future studies, you can say so. However, Wikipedia, I don't know, students don't use Wikipedia as they should. Therefore, there are other factors to consider. But in the conclusion, you need to talk about the topic in general. So you could so even though we've seen that the internet has plenty beneficial sites or beneficial, um, I don't know.
Even though no es aunque,
Yes. So
si bien is the same.
yeah, si bien is like, yeah, it's like aunque incluso, so even if, even though, although, I don't think there's another word for si bien, but let's look it up. So no, not this one, but let's see.
Yes, oh.
While,
Okay.
so yes, you can say while, or even though, even if, or while Wikipedia is a good tool for analysis, people don't use it as they should. So while we have seen that the internet has plenty of good sides to it, there are other factors that should be considered for future research, such as the impact on a student's emotional health and, I don't know, their academic performance or this and that. So you're just suggesting topics for research studies or research or kind of for future studies, you know? So that's something that you can include or not. It depends, it's up to you. But the basic things are the summary and restating your position. So here the author is saying, as seen in the previous paragraphs or the body paragraphs, the internet has had a major positive impact on the world of education. And then you're summarizing your reasons, right? Occasional pitfalls aside, so putting the shortcomings aside, its value is evident in numerous applications. The future of teaching lies in the possibilities the internet opens up for communication, research, and interactivity. So those are
So
probably the reasons.
he's not mentioned Wikipedia. He's in
No, because
general.
Wikipedia is part of research, right?
Mhm.
So maybe in communication, he talked about social media and WhatsApp. He's not going to mention WhatsApp itself, but what it means, right? It means it's a means of communication for students. Wikipedia is a means for research. And maybe Classroom or Google Classroom is a mean for interactivity, right?
Mhm.
So he's saying, as seen in the previous paragraphs, the internet has had a positive impact on education. Leaving aside what teachers think or the shortcomings, it is undeniable that its value, I don't know, opens up this and this and that for students. So this is a summary.
Mm-hmm.
Then here, he's showing.
Explain me again the summarize part.
Of course, yeah. So first thing, he's summarizing here what everything means. So their body paragraphs have shown that the internet has positive impacts, right? With Wikipedia, with Classroom, and WhatsApp. He's saying
this conclusion is about the main idea that we checked before.
This one here, right? Wikipedia.
Okay.
So this was the intro right away. Where is it? This one here, right? The spread of the internet.
Ah, okay.
We can compare the intro with the conclusion. You're gonna see that it's the same.
Because I was confused in the body paragraph, we talk about only Wikipedia.
Because that's one of the where is it? That's one of the arguments, right? Maybe he should have been a bit more general too in the argument. He should have started by saying a common frustration for teachers is I don't know, the impact of the internet in a student's abilities to do research. So then he can say, for example, they are worried about the use of Wikipedia. So maybe that would have been better, you know, like in the topic sentence, he says, is the impact of the internet I don't know. I don't know. Maybe okay, so maybe just like that. So he could start by providing a general overview of what the paragraph is about outside of the details. So a common frustration for teachers is the impact of the internet in students' abilities for doing research. So that's kind of like the thing here, right? That's the thing. It's about how the internet, which in this case is illustrated by Wikipedia, is just an example of what the internet is.
For example, yes.
Yes, has a negative effect on students' abilities to do research because according to teachers, so they are not engaging with genuine academic writing, and they are kind of discourages engagement with academic sources. So they don't know how to cite and they don't know how to do research because of Wikipedia. But he's objecting that, right? So maybe he could start this way so that he can be a bit more, I don't know, a bit more broad about the topic. So then here it would make more sense, right? It would make more sense to say, lies on the possibilities the internet opens up for research. So that's Wikipedia and everything else. No? So in the conclusion, in the summary part, you need to summarize what you have seen in the body paragraphs and the reasons or what it involves. So as seen in the previous paragraphs, the internet has good effects on education. So such as communication, research, and interactivity, basically. That's the summary. Then he here is making sort of like a suggestion. It's not exactly suggesting topics for future research, but he's using the word should, you know? So he's suggesting, basically, suggesting teachers to view the internet as a positive thing. So he's saying educators should fully embrace the advantages of the internet. So he's encouraging the reader to take his side. You know what I mean? So he's saying, as the popularity of distance learning shows, students value the flexibility and accessibility offered by digital education. So students value the internet and educators should too. So he's making a suggestion on how the reader should act after reading this, or the position that the reader should take. And then he's just restating his position. So he's saying the internet's dangers, real and imaginary, have been documented exhaustively by skeptics. But the internet is here to stay. So it is time to focus seriously on its potential for good. So once again, he's stating his claim. He's saying it's true that the internet may be dangerous sometimes, but there's nothing we can do about it because the internet is going to stay whether we want it or not. So instead of focusing on the dangers, we should be focusing on what's good about the internet so that we can use it as a good tool. You know? So that's his conclusion. And as you can see, it's also like a hook. You know, the internet is here to stay. It's time to focus seriously on its potential for good. So it's kind of like calling the reader to do something. So it is time for you to focus on the potential of the internet. So it's very conclusive. It's very, I don't know, what could we say? Catchy. So it's catchy too. So it's like another hook. That's the conclusion. You summarize, you can reflect or call for action, and then you restate your position and you emphasize why it's important. Here, the author is also telling you why his position is important, because he's saying it's important because the internet is something that we need to live with, whether we want it or not. So that's why we need to focus on the good side, and that's what I'm doing in this essay. So that's why my essay is important, right? That's what.
But we don't have to mention like any argument that we write in the body part.
I mean, the arguments would be these ones here. Communication, decision,
not exactly like the body part.
Not exactly. Like the topic in general. So if this one was about, I don't know, safety, then you just say safety. You're not going to mention maybe seat belts. So you don't focus on the details, but on the general.
The conclusion is not answering the main idea.
The question, it is answering the question. Because the question is, well, in this case, we don't have a question, but the question for this essay would be
the impact of the internet.
Such negative. So does the internet have such negative effects on education as teachers try to make it look like? That would be the question for this essay. And then he's answering the question. So he's saying, so as seen, the internet has positive effects aside of the occasional pitfalls, so the shortcomings, the future of teaching, so he's talking about teachers, lies in the possibility that the internet opens up, communication, research, and interactivity. So teachers should embrace these advantages, right? Because the internet is here for good, so you better look at the bright side of it. So he is answering the question, and he is kind of repeating his intro, right? In his intro, he says, so the use of the internet in academic contexts is really debated. It's something that teachers don't like, right? However, the negatives are outweighed by the benefits, right? So here he also summarized it, right? He said, as an information source is the same as saying research, and so information source is research. Exposure and engagement is communication, right? Because they are communicated, they are exposed to other students, to, I don't know. And then flexible learning environment, that means interactivity, right? So it's a flexible environment in which students can interact with each other, with their teachers, with this or that, So in both of them, he summarized his reasons. So information source, Wikipedia. Exposure and engagement, I don't know, I guess WhatsApp. In environment, maybe classroom or something. So that's it. Okay. I don't know if you have any questions now.
No.
So now you're gonna have to write. Actually, okay, no, no, we're not gonna write anything. We're gonna write it Monday. So you're gonna do it in class in a document, half of the essay, maybe at least the intro and one body paragraph. And if we have time, maybe the conclusion too, or an example of a conclusion, but then you're gonna finish off your essay at home. And that's gonna be the final one, right? So no assignments for Monday.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, Monday is gonna be like our quiz on everything we've seen. Okay, I will check your essay today and return it with some feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, and I also share this, so.
The topic will be about.
I can't tell you what the topic will be about because.
Yes. But it's something that I mean, people know. Because
you're going to be allowed to use the internet if you want, so you can do some research.
Okay.
Okay, so I sent you that.
Okay.
So then that's gonna sending you the survey.
Okay. I will send. Okay.
Okay, Mafe.
Thank you, Andrea.
No, thank you. And have a nice weekend. Enjoy your week.
See you Monday.
Yes. Bye-bye. Take care.